Hello there. If you like truth, you'll like it here. Welcome. God had to shut my mouth to save my future. Full disclosure, God put what I'm about to talk about on my agenda when I wasn't even checking for this topic at all. If I'm being honest, I wasn't even planning on releasing anything this week. I had put in a community post last week saying that I was going to try to move to a schedule of posting once a week on Friday mornings. But I did also warn that I do not like schedules and didn't know if I'd be willing to commit to being on a weekly schedule. Well, the verdict is in, and let's just say I realized that I will not be adhering to a weekly schedule, unless of course I feel like it. And I won't know what I feel like doing until I feel like doing it. So I was going to skip this week. That was my plan. But you know what they say about plans. Make them if you want to make God laugh. Well, God must be rolling on the floor laughing right now, because here we are. I don't know who this is for, but I am confident it's for someone. And I would love if, whomever it's for, if you'd share below in the comments. Mind you, it's not something you have to share. Maybe I'm just being nosy, but if I am, it's only because I am curious about who this person is that God loves so much that He moved me to change my whole day to get a message out to them. Trust me, He loves and sees you, whomever you are. He loves you enough to put me to work on your behalf, despite my plan to not do so. So here's my story. Here's my testimony. In college, I used to work as a front desk clerk at a national hotel chain, and it was a job I enjoyed. I mentioned it earlier in another video where I detailed being robbed at gunpoint. Well, that robbery was at this same hotel, and up until that point, I had loved working there. I'd been fortunate to meet so many people from many different parts of the world, and even got to practice the various languages I had been teaching myself to speak with those people from around the world. Plus, I loved that it accommodated my college schedule and allowed me to work 55 to 60 hours a week while not missing a beat in my studies. It was an all-around pleasurable experience. Well, at least until the robbery. But you get my point. Although I met many wonderful people on a daily basis, I did also meet the occasional dirtbag. I once had a young woman run into the hotel and ask me to hide her. I did, with no questions asked. I put her in the private staff bathroom and went back to work. A short time later, a very well-dressed man pulled up, and I could see that he had been driving a very expensive car because he pulled up right outside of the hotel. He walked inside and asked if I'd seen a young lady, then proceeded to describe the young lady that had run into the hotel in detail. This was the same young lady that I was currently hiding, just a few feet from where he stood. Of course, unbeknownst to him, I told the man that I had not seen the young lady he had described, or really anyone, as it had been quiet all night. He thanked me and left. I later learned that the young lady had been pimped out by that man and had been driven to my state to prostitute herself out to men who were in town for my city's annual event. If you guys want me to do a video on this story, because there's much more to it, then let me know in the comments below, and I will. But for now, suffice it to say, I hid that young woman for the rest of my shift, snuck her into my car after my shift was over, then drove her to the Greyhound station, where I paid for a ticket to get her back to her home state and away from that pimp. This is just one example of some of the more seedier people I met and/or situations I found myself in while working at that hotel. But none have impacted me and my life the way this story that I am about to share has. One evening during my 3 to 11 shift, a black woman, a black man, and about 5 kids came into the hotel I was working at, needing a room for the night. They were counting up change and stray, balled-up dollars, and although they didn't look homeless, it was apparent that they had fallen on hard times. When I saw them counting up what little they had, I called the lady over to me and away from her children and told her that I would comp a room for her and her family. This means I was giving them the room for free. Now, technically, we aren't allowed to do this, and I had never done that before or after, but I needed to do something. And I knew that my boss knew me and the kind of heart I had and would understand. Plus, he and his wife loved having me work there, so I knew I wasn't going to be fired. Worst case scenario, I was going to have to pay for the room myself, and that was something I was willing to do. So I went forward with it. The lady was so thankful. She and her husband both seemed so happy and joyful, and it made my day to make theirs. After giving the family the key to the room, I wrote out a little note for my bosses so they could see that I had comped the room for someone, and also letting them know that I would gladly pay for it if my comping the room was a problem. Then I went on about my evening. A few hours later, the woman and her husband came back up to the front desk, and I greeted them. They asked if I would give them a suite for free. I told them that I would not be able to do that, and would maybe even get in a bit of trouble for giving them the double room I had already given them for free. The woman told me that she needed more space for her 5 kids, and that the 2 beds wouldn't be enough. Although I was somewhat taken aback by her audacity, I stayed calm and explained to the woman that we weren't authorized to give rooms away for free, but that it was something I had done for them to be nice. I didn't want to say that I had also done it because I could see that they couldn't afford to pay, because I didn't want to embarrass the woman, and who I presume was her husband or boyfriend. The same way I hadn't wanted to embarrass them by offering them the free room in front of who I presume were their children. The woman then, rather rudely, asked me, "Well, where do you want me to put my 5 children?" By now, she was working my nerves, and I have always had a temper. I had only been saved a few years at that point, and although I had been actively asking God to help temper my temper, this lady was trying me, and I could feel my anger rising. I think I talked about that previous temper and how God saved me from it in a previous video, which I will link in the description and at the end of this video. In that video, I talked about how, once upon a time, I did very little talking and a lot more whopping upside the head of those that needed whopping upside the head, at least according to me. And although God had changed and softened me, I was only a few years removed from those days, and I felt that lady was about to take me back there in the express lane. I took a deep breath and did not answer where she could put her 5 kids, because, trust me, she wouldn't have liked my answer. And instead, I ended the conversation by telling her, definitively, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I've done all I can do." I was hoping that would end it, and Miss Ungrateful would carry her annoying behind away from me so I could keep my sanity and my freedom. But what happened next shocked the socks off me. I was not at all prepared for it. Hello there. If you like truth, you'll like it here. Welcome.